think the first thing we can talk about is the CARES Act, and just kind of review what that has offered to the community and to affected communities in the form of loans and grants. The PPP product obviously has gotten a lot of attention. The second round just finished up. If I say finished up, it's actually, there's still money to be funded there, but I would expect it to finish up today, maybe tomorrow. Just help businesses go through with funding payroll and rent and utilities. But going forward, there are other options the SBA offers for economic injury relief. Specifically, there's an economic injury and disaster loan program that a lot of people have heard about, that the first advance is $10,000. It can actually be forgiven. A lot of people did apply for that. It's supposed to be a pretty quick turnaround. Most people, it took at least 30 days to get that initial advance. But what a lot of folks are not talking about is that is just an advance. There's actually money left for an actual loan that has some very liberal repayment terms. You can go up to $2 million. It's based on needs. It's not just, you just put a number out there. You have to show the economic damage that has been done. And you can go up to $2 million. The rate will not exceed 4%. And the term is up to 30 years. In order to get this type of loan, you do have to go directly through SBA. There's paper applications and online. Most people, of course, go online with that. I'm not familiar personally with anyone that's actually gone and applied for that program yet.
We have.
Okay.
And we have actually had workshops on both of these programs.
Okay.
And promoted them through the city's website, not just our own. So it wasn't a membership benefit, it was for the community. So we've been working really closely with SBA as well as the U.S. Chamber to help offer those types of workshops. The format for the disaster loan is a pretty easy application process. They told everybody to apply early. So we applied, we got the $10,000 advance, and we've got a loan, or we've got a application number, but we haven't heard back from them. They ran out of money before they got to our request. And then they, but then the 10,000 showed up in our account last week. So that's good news that we're still in the queue, and maybe that we would even be able to receive some of those funds. But they were trying to get their site refigured and hire some more people to help process those more quickly, because they were just overwhelmed with that process, and their site crashed when the second round of funding. So they are working on that, though, to improve the process for SBA as well. But if anybody has questions, we actually had somebody on our team try to become an expert on that, and actually has a regular communication with the SBA. So we're collecting questions and talking to the SBA, kind of going through a list of things and then getting back to people. So we're doing that too.
I think it should free up some when the PPP program goes away. There's so much resource having to be met with that. I think there's only like 2,000 SBA employees across the country, maybe more now, but it's just very difficult, as you could imagine, to process everything. I will say that on that initial $10,000 advance, a lot of people did receive correspondence that limited it to them $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000, which that really wasn't communicated well early on. Most people did not realize that.
Correct.
So, then the other thing that I've got to add with this is that most banks are working with commercial and consumer borrowers as far as deferments and things go. It's not a very difficult process if you're in good standing with the bank, and you can request 90 to 120 day extensions, or deferrals, I should say. That has helped. We do think it's going to help through the summer. There's also a lot of people that are on what we call seasonal payment plans, where the principals do more through the summer months. Many banks are deferring the principal payments until next year. We do encourage people to talk to the banks ahead of time before there's a problem, so that you can get some relief. And Ray, you want to talk a little bit about what you and I spoke about with the state funding?
Sure. I had multiple conversations with William Bailey and Greg Hembry, our state senator and our state House of Representatives, asking them what funds might be available to us at a state level. And first and foremost, they both ultimately had the same message in reference to the $1.9 billion that Maryland spoke about at our last meeting. And initially, that money is restricted strictly to COVID relief for municipalities in our state. And from talking to both of those folks, they feel like that's not going to use up a whole heck of a lot of that $1.9 billion. They are looking for the federal government, this is as of a couple of days ago, to lift the restrictions on how that money can be released to different communities and how that money can be spent. Obviously the hope is it will be released to some Chamber of Commerce's and that type thing. But William's information was a few days old. Greg spoke with him yesterday, and he actually had we had a right good conversation about this exact thing. And he is still under the impression that the guidelines are still in place for that monies to be strictly used for COVID relief, such as, municipalities might have had to hire additional employees or might have purchased an ambulance or PPP or stuff of that nature. But look at, straight reimbursement from the state at the direction of the federal government. Secondly, when I talked to Greg, and this is a little bit of wishful thinking, but they have identified currently, the number he gave me was $267 million of non-reoccurring money that is in the budget to be forwarded to municipalities for marketing campaigns. He further stated that Hugh Leatherman happened to be in favor of this particular use of that particular money, which, for those who know Hugh, is the most powerful politician we have in the state of South Carolina, and chairman of the State Finance Committee, I guess, on the Senate side. So that part is good news. But he cautioned me that, we've had so many budget shortfalls that it's not a guarantee that $267 million will be there at the end of this fiscal year, which is in, I guess, June 30. They both intimated that they're going to attempt to pass a budget for next year similar. They feel like it'll be similar to last year's budget. So not a whole lot of surplus coming from that budget. Luckily the state of South Carolina has been a really, really, really strong position and have, several $1 billion in the bank because they're doing such a good job in Columbia. But they've had so many shortfalls in the last 30, 60 days and going for the next 30 or 60 days. We'll see if that $267 billion is there. If it is, it sounds like we got a friend in Hugh Leatherman, and it'll be a good additional amount of money to go directly toward marketing municipalities. So for whatever it's worth, I'm not 100% confident that money will be there, but there is a potential for that money to be there. So I did ask both of our representatives if they were aware of any state money available to individual business owners as far as in the term of grants or relief of any way. And they both intimated that was not going to be the case, or they did not anticipate that being the case, that it was strictly going to be for municipalities that they were going to be able to assist. And again, it's you know, they're hardly going to even go back to session before they have to approve this next budget. And in the intent, it sounds like from talking to both of those guys, and they can't predict the future, but is hopefully to pass a budget similar to the 2019-20 budget. But that certainly might not happen either. But that was a little bit of information that I was able to find out more from a state level, not a federal level, on what potentially might be available to our city and/or chamber for getting the ball rolling and marketing our wonderful beach again.
Mark, if I could chime in on the chamber CVB sort of position, both at the federal and state levels. The 501c6s are how most of us are classified, and some are actually part of municipalities in South Carolina. So either you're a C6 or you're a city or county agency. And the block grants don't really cover what we do for the ones that are municipalities. And then C6s were left out of the CARES Act for any sort of relief. The SBA disaster loans is really the only opportunity. And then US Travel, Destinations International, US Chambers have all been working on trying to get C6s named in another round. And so far they haven't been able to get it in. There's some indication that there might be opportunities through a regional economic development authority to get some marketing dollars, but that has to be, that goes through a regional, there's 6 regional economic development offices, and it has to be a certified pre-approved plan. So it's not like you can create a recovery plan. It's like you've got a certified plan and you can go back and and get some additional funds to replace it. So I did reach out to Sandy Davis to see if there was tourism promotion in those, and we have not connected yet, but I did make that outreach effort. I know that the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber as well as the North Myrtle Beach Chamber have both requested funds from the governor. We have letters from both William Bailey and Greg Embry supporting ours, and everybody has suggested that this group might want to recommend support of our letter, and as well as really that the mayor is going to be in a position potentially to really help us get those. We did put in dollars to market the community, but also to have workshops and try to make sure that we had some resources for the businesses. So it wasn't just for marketing. We did include a portion of the request to, if we need to do training, we need to bring people in, we need to have, make our building available for different resources so people can get some of those things out. We've been looking at whether or not we need to help with the supply chain, and is there a benefit for us doing that sort of thing. So those are some of the things that we put in ours as far as trying to be that resource for the community at large. Again, not based on membership, but that community at large to serve in helping ignite the economy as we open our doors back up for ourselves and then ultimately for visitors. You're on mute. Sorry.
On the economic injury loan that you guys applied for, did you have to specify the amount yet, or they've gotten that far with you?
They haven't gotten that far yet. So all we have is an application number, and we applied in March before the end of the month, but after they had the thing, we didn't have to apply twice. But we are in the queue. It was good news when we got the 10,000, because that does mean that we're getting closer, but we haven't heard yet.
Right. So they've not asked for additional information or anything yet?
They haven't asked us.
Yeah, that's the part I'm curious about, because no one has gotten that far that I know of.
Right.
I'm anxious to hear exactly what the SBA is going to ask for, what you have to provide, how they're going to determine what the actual loss is. If they're going to provide for future anticipated losses. I'm just curious to know that, because we've not gotten any guidance on that either.
Yeah, and we've talked to Ed Horton about that, with Anderson Brothers, because he's on our board, and he you know, it's difficult when it's a financial disaster because you can't point to it and say this tree came through my roof. And
Right.
so we did have to provide quite a bit of documentation of what was our running 12 months revenue and expenses. So they're not just looking at our P&L from last year. They're looking at the 12 months so we can compare year over year. I think that will be part of what they'll see is how do we compare from last year, and be able to demonstrate that there's that big gap because the funding, you know, has halted when businesses were closed.
Right.
So we own our building, so I think we're in good position in that way when they do get to that collateral part. But it's also nonprofits the application's not really designed for us. It's designed for a business that's got sales. And so when we get to that point, it'll be very interesting. And of course, I'll share. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and traditionally the SBA is not really looked at collateral that hard. They do look at the cash flow. You know, they're more stringent on that part of it. And generally SBA has gotten involved when there's actually collateral shortages. But as long as you're pledging everything you have that's, you know, it's available, they're normally okay with it. I'm just curious to see how they treat this particular type of loan.
Right. I was on a call with the U.S. Chamber, and there were some concerns being expressed that business owners were having to give their personal Social Security and their own, you know, home kind of thing for helping back it up. So I do think that they are going to try to collateralize some of it, right, based on those conversations. So it will be interesting. As nonprofits, we didn't have to give Social Security numbers. We just had to use our federal ID number, but I do think that having our building will help.
Right. Does anyone else have any other avenues they want to talk about as far as funding goes?
I have a question. Some communities have worked with their community foundations and have created some small grants, you know, even if they're $5,000 or $10,000, because not everybody had to close, and some people might be in a position to give. And I didn't know if we thought we should try to find a community partner to do any sort of campaign and see if there was a way to provide some relief that went to the businesses, not what the same thing that the federal monies would be providing, but if somebody could have money to help buy supplies. I mean, part of what I worry about is with all these new protocols, is it going to be expensive for some of those small businesses to say, I can't afford to do that yet? And at what point are they going to wait till their foot traffic is great enough to be able to buy some of the things that they're going to need to meet the protocols? So should we think about how to help either buy down those resources so that they're affordable for everybody, or if we could figure out a way to have some small grants to help with something like that?
Right. I mean, I think anything's going to help. I think the big challenge that a lot of businesses are going to face is what you said is the cost to reopen. Mm-hmm. You know, whether they're on good terms with their vendors, you don't know. Everybody's got a different situation. I would imagine there's a lot of businesses that actually owe vendors for things before this happened, coming out of the winter. So, I mean, I think it's something that we should explore, you know, as a community to look to see. But how do you identify who to help? How do you do it? I mean, if you're talking about buying down, are you just talking about like actually going to the sanitizer vendor and trying to buy more at one time, sort of pool money together? Or?
Yeah, and on a call earlier today with the Carolina Chambers, some North Carolina communities, their health departments are actually helping buy some of those things for businesses so that they're getting them and they don't have to worry about going out and finding their own supply chain. And then they're making sure that they're getting what's been approved so that people aren't getting a knockoff and then it's not what's intended to be used. And so I don't know, there might be some way that the city could work with the health department and some others. Maybe there's a foundation that we could kind of put a partnership together to help with that. Like I said, we're looking at it too. If there's a role for us, we're certainly trying to make sure we're doing our part. But we're not really set up to do that. So if somebody else is better set up, then we want to support that. But if there's a gap that we can help fill, we'd certainly look at that too.
Right. Okay.
Cheryl, I got a question for you.
Okay.
What does the chamber predict as the fallout from this? How many members is the chamber going to lose in y'all's estimation?
Yeah, in our worst case scenario, we're estimating about a 50% reduction in dues revenue, as well as in our public funds. And actually, it's a little bit more than that because the 65% from the accommodations taxes, the city hasn't talked about that yet. And there's a bunch of grants, and it goes to a lot of different things that need to be prioritized. And we could be, the visitor center could become less of a priority than public safety as it relates to visitors. And so there's going to be difficult conversations yet to have. So we're basing our funding model for next year off of 50% of the 30% accommodations taxes over the course of the year.
So what dollar amount does that mean?
Oh, I could pull that up. This year it's 1.1, so it's about 600,000 versus 1.2.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. We actually think that we'll be closer to 30 to 40% down, but I'd rather add back and have a plan to add than a plan to cut. And so we're budgeting worst case with here's what we'll add as revenues come in. The dues, it's not all dues, it's the events, because if we can't gather and have events and sell sponsorships, or the sponsorships that we can do virtually and that sort of thing, it's a big hit because our private sector portion of our budget, so our public funds are right around 2.3 million, and our private's right around 1.5. And because we get money from SCPRT, which we're still applying for that grant. We've got private sector dollars plus dues plus sponsorships. We're expecting the sponsorship part to be a big hit. And if the occupancy is down to the degree that the city is projecting, then the dues that are based off of rooms and the private sector that's based off of room nights sold would be similarly 50%. So our fair share model is based off of number of employees. And if people don't come back to work, that affects the dues value. So it's pretty severe. And we've eliminated some positions, and we're probably going to have to go a little bit deeper in order to do that. But the city did support our recovery strategy. We're contributing to that as well. But the resident part, we couldn't do without the city support because we can't use our restricted tourism dollars inside North Myrtle Beach. Those have to be spent outside a 50-mile radius.
So is that the money you're trying to recoup from this?
From the loan. Mm-hmm.
Disaster relief loan?
Yes. That, and to be able to operate the building and the overhead to keep the visitor center going and that sort of thing.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah.
I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was going to be potentially catastrophic.
Yeah, there are chambers and CVBs that are closing around the country because we haven't been in any of the relief. And in some communities where there's not good partnerships, the funds are being diverted for other things, and they're actually trying to not use the dollars for what they are. And in South Carolina, that conversation is going on, as the mayor relayed, but I believe that it's for the 65%, not for the 30%. So that's why we're not banking on getting any of the 65%, but the 30% by state code comes to the recognized destination marketing organization, which is us for North Myrtle Beach.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a good partnership though too. So we're I support and hope we'll be invited to participate in those conversations because they will be difficult, but we want our visitors to be safe. And if we need to do things differently to make sure that we've got enough lifeguards, we want to do that.
Right.
Yeah, I did see where they were hiring lifeguards. Was that part of the 200 employees that was furloughed? Was it big services or?
Yeah, Mike has stepped away. My understanding is part of that is because the J1 students can't get here right now.
That's right. There you go. Okay.
And then part of it is how much they can have with their different furloughs, and they didn't fill vacant positions. And so he said in a meeting yesterday we had with the accommodations, they have 10 lifeguards for 9 miles of beach.
Oh my.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Thanks, Cheryl. Does anyone else have anything to add? Okay.
Are there thoughts on if we were to approach a foundation, who we should suggest? Do we want to make any sort of, outreach? I think the Myrtle Beach area worked with the Waccamaw Community Foundation. And Frank, are you on that board? You might be on mute.
What was the question?
Are you on the Waccamaw Foundation board?
No, I'm not. No.
You're on the McLeod trustee?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something that the McLeod Foundation might be a good partner to try to get some of those supplies, do you think? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
I really don't have any idea. I'd have to kind of check into that to see.
Okay.
I do have one question. I think I heard the chamber did get $10,000 already.
We did.
Okay, because all we've gotten back is a number and nothing else, and we filed it right in the beginning.
Yeah, it showed up in our bank account last week. We got no paperwork. It was just a deposit directly into our account.
Okay.
We did a little dance, but yeah. It meant we were still in the queue. We were excited.
Yeah, that's been the identical feedback we've had from everyone.
Yeah.
They didn't know they got it until they looked at the bank account.
Right.
The
Cheryl,
only
I don't know if
foundation I'm aware of is the Waccamaw Community Foundation. That's the only one that I personally am aware of in our area.
Right.
Yeah. The chamber has a foundation, but we don't have a foundation staff. And right now, I mean, like I said, we're happy to do our part, but I don't have anybody to commit to that. And we need to concentrate on the recovery efforts. I'd rather find a foundation that's got some people that can work on it with us to help run a campaign or do that sort of thing, because I don't think we don't have that bandwidth. We've got to concentrate on getting people back out into businesses. So,
Yeah, I think that's the big challenge is how do you, who does the work, who raises the money? I mean, when it's affecting as many people, it's not just isolated.
right.
You know, everyone's basically out of work or out of business right now, and I don't know how you get people to focus on something when they have their own issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't have anything further to add, unless there's someone else got some other ideas as far as funding goes or options out there.
So we can summarize these. The block grants our city's not eligible for. They already know that. So we can summarize what we've talked about today, and I think that's part of the report and part of the recommendation. And then as far as there's keep going with the workshops and offering resources. Right, the city's doing that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the level of communication so that everyone at least understands what options there are, even though they're not. It doesn't seem like a lot. The SBA is not the only, funding option as far as borrowing money. You can always go to your bank or wherever, but as far as terms and things go, they're hard to beat. Most commercial money you can get 15 years, maybe 20. If you can get something at a 30-year fixed under 4%, then that should help tremendously. And I would stress again about the deferral payments, where just to go ahead and think about what's going to happen over the next few months. And Frank and I met yesterday and we talked about how scary it is for everybody now, but the winter time is the part that we don't know yet. We just don't know what kind of season we got. And where most people are working and enjoying making money right now, but in the back of your mind, you always know that when the winter months are coming, and it's a little scary to know what's going to happen now.
Right. One of the things that we're doing at the chambers, we've got a series of workshops coming. So we've got somebody coming to talk about how to look at your budget, make those hard calls on, you know, sort of your financial position and how to try to improve that as you're working through this and out of it, and really trying to provide some resources like that. So if you all have some workshops that you are doing or you think we should add to our list, and the city's been really great about helping promote those so that they're getting out there. But we just, we're getting ready tomorrow to send out a list of what we're going to be doing in May, starting the next Thursday with that type of programming. And we've got from tax issues, the financial, HR, all that sort of thing, trying to make sure that people are getting access to free workshops and some expertise that sometimes you'd have to pay quite a lot to go hear these people speak, to make sure that it's all focused on how to get restarted.
Yeah. How about any kind of literature or anything? Is the chamber putting together anything to send out to the members?
Yeah, we, the Carolina chambers are putting together a sort of a book on reopening and what that looks like, and a toolkit for businesses. And they're hoping to have that done in pretty short order over the next week or so. We'll be able to go through it and kind of vet it for our community and then get that out. So we don't have to create that, which is a relief. And then I think the protocols and that sort of thing that this group will be recommending, and then, you know, that can easily fit into that. So there's more collaboration occurring where people aren't just trying to all do our own version, but working together and pooling resources to offer some of that is really starting to show up. Yeah.
I've seen a little bit already from on the restaurant side where some of the food, US Foods and Cisco are starting to put out some information that's really helpful when you read it. Some of the things may seem like common sense, but they still need to be said. And so I think I found that to be very helpful in reading through what I've seen from them. I think it would be good to have something, you know, from our community,
right,
in similar.
I think we're going to start to see announcements. I mean, we don't have as many big box businesses as some other communities, but, you know, Costco announced yesterday that starting May 4th, everybody's got to wear a mask when you go inside. I think we're going to start to see some of those leading the way, and that's going to impact what we're all doing for our own personal preparedness as well. And that's part of what I think we'll want to include in the community messaging. So I think about the neighborhoods and, you know, what do they need to help their homeowners understand what some of those things are. And, you know, the two that are participating have facilities as well, but just, you know, trying to make sure that the community knows what they need to have.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yes, sir.
So our next group is meeting at 2:15. So Allison, did we go dark until 2:15 for the people who are observing, but just leave the Zoom live?
Yeah, we're just leaving it open.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All
So
right.
if anybody wants to stay for the next session, they can. And anybody that's entering in the waiting room, I'm automatically putting them in at what time they enter the waiting room.
Okay. Very good.
Okay.
So we'll just call it, somebody will just call it the order at 2:15, basically.
Yes. And
Okay.
Frank is in that one as well, and he's here. So if you step away, Frank, for a few minutes, that's okay. I'm going to turn my little camera off and mute my phone, but I'll be here. So Allison, when it gets to that time, if you don't see me, you can just, you know, like we did earlier, just make sure we know we're getting ready to start.
Okay.
Do we have a meeting tomorrow?
Yes, at 1:30.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna step away, but I will see y'all tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Hi, Jonathan. Good to see you come in. Frank, are you ready to get this group started? I think we have just about everybody here.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is Frank Boulineau again, and I will get started. Yesterday, Marc and Jeff and myself kind of met, and we'd sent out an email, and we were the only ones that responded, so I guess others were busy or something. I did get some information later on in the day from some other participants. But the biggest thing we looked at right now is that everybody seems to be doing guidelines. I think the South Carolina Restaurant Association is probably the guidelines that the governor's going to look at the most. I have, like a couple other folks, talked to our representatives the last couple of days, and that seems the way where they're headed. So we did basically just put together some real basic guidelines, not trying to go into a lot of detail, and thought we'd discuss that at today's meeting to kind of see what everybody thought and where we thought we ought to go. On Myrtle Beach's website, they do have a very detailed list of guidelines for several different type of businesses. And again, if you look at other associations, they have the same thing. So I guess we're kind of looking for some input at this time and to see what we really need to continue to do and if what we've done is enough. Marc, do you have anything to add to that?
Sorry, Frank, I had it on mute.
Okay.
No, I mean, we feel like, well, we talked a good bit yesterday about just how much detail really needs to be in these things. What we were trying to do, I guess, is sort of a balancing act where you try to be sensitive to the actual needs within these protocols, and then at the same time, what the business could conceivably do without a lot of financial stress, and just how they operate. So we were intentionally vague to a point as far as the restaurant side goes, and I think we focused a lot on education and cleanliness and signage and so forth, really geared toward the customer. And as far as the business itself, to provide guidelines and obviously with the anticipation that businesses would do additional things that they deem necessary, depending upon how their business was set up.
Another thing on the guidelines too, it's really going to affect the size of the business. I've read some guidelines say that business can't have over 50 customers in the business. Well, is this a restaurant only set 25 in the beginning, or is this a restaurant that seats 400? So, I mean, the guidelines for a restaurant have to be all over the place because there's so many different styles of restaurants, size restaurants, and type restaurants.
This is Cheryl. Do you have some recommendations that you want to share with everybody to have people look at them before tomorrow so that we sort of make any sort of recommendation to the council? Or is your recommendation that we wait for something from the Restaurant Association?
Well, Cheryl, we sent you some of the recommendations yesterday. Did you get those?
I did, yes. And then I sent you a bunch of stuff too.
What was that? I missed the last part of your conversation.
I said I sent you some additional information. We had compiled some.
You did?
Yes. Did you get that?
Okay. I did, yes.
Okay.
Frank, this is Cathy. I sent you some thoughts. I don't know if you got that. And I didn't
did get
see,
them, Cathy, yes.
Okay. And I didn't see any email from you about a meeting, so sorry.
I apologize.
Should we just kind of review them verbally as we should do, and then maybe we kind of work some of the things through and then decide what we'll present tomorrow to the rest of the group?
If you want to work with the list that Frank sent me, I could share it on my screen, right? Allison, or do I need to send it to you?
Do that and we'll go over it that way.
Yeah. Allison, will I be able to do it, or do you need to do it? Did you set it up where I can do it?
I won't be able to do it because I don't have the share Yes, could
Oh,
you do it?
I have a share on my screen. Yeah, so I can do it. I'm just pulling it up right now so I can do that. That was from that was from Betsy Mixon, right?
That was from Betsy, yes,
Yep.
correct.
Okay. All right, so. Mhm. So can you see the guidelines page on here?
Can you make it bigger, Cheryl?
Yes, I should be able to.
Oh, that's good.
Is that good?
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, do you want to go them individually, or what would y'all like to do? Like the first one says, post signage at time clocks.
Yeah, I think that would be best, just to go down individually and get any kind of thoughts or, some feedback on that.
What I'm going to do is I can actually type in here. I turned my little camera off so you can see my backdrop, but I can actually manage the, if we want to make any edits as we're going too.
I think we lost the list, sir.
Yeah, we lost the list.
Okay, let me, I'm going to stop sharing and share it again. Sorry, I don't know what happened. That bring it back?
Yes.
Okay. When I close
And I
my,
think one thing we all need to remember too, these are more or less suggestions too, right? And again, the size of the restaurant, the type of restaurant is going to make a lot of difference, I think, in what they do and how they implement it.
right.
So getting back to the first one about post signage at time clocks, I think that's pretty basic. Any questions or comments on that?
No.
No.
Okay, all right, the second one is post signage at entrances. And we've done this at Boulineau's. We've got signages actually over the store, but we've done this at the entrance telling the customers kind of how we're going to act and what we expect them to do.
Frank, should there be included in that signage any indication of how you've tested employees or you've taken their temperatures or that everybody's clear or anything like that?
We've got some notes later on about temperatures, yes.
Okay.
And of course, we are posted signage that we're adhering to CDC and DHEC. That's standard anyway. We have to do that, of course, anyway. Step up cleaning procedures. We kind of left that one like that because that's really going to depend on the size of the restaurant. I think some of the larger restaurants might actually station somebody at their restrooms to keep them clean, where a small restaurant maybe couldn't do that. But I mean, the cleaning procedures and sanitation need to be stepped up for everyone. Encourage the use of disposable menus. I think that's, a lot of people have made that comment. I think that's pretty simple. Thoroughly sanitize the tables and that stuff. That definitely needs to be done after each guest leaves. The next one might be a little discussion is encourage the use of rolled silverware or prepackaged silverware. And I personally have mixed emotions about that. I'm not sure that the prepackaged silverware we get from China is any cleaner than what I do through my sanitary system and I roll. So I need some
That's a
input
good
on that
point.
one.
It's also not a very green practice, which we've talked about a lot as a community, trying to get away from that single-use plastic. And a lot of that's wrapped in plastic and it is plastics. And it seems contrary to what we've talked about over the last couple of years.
And one thing Boulineau does, we do a lot of importing, and a lot of this time comes packed in these bubble wraps. And they've warned us not to break these bubble wraps because we might release the wrong ear and eye air, which is probably far-fetched. But again, it's another safety precaution we can do.
Right.
So any thoughts on that, or we leave it kind of like it is?
Well, if you have the rolled silverware, that means it has been sterilized in a dishwasher and it's wrapped in a rolled napkin, right?
Correct, yes. And of course, dehydrate requires our water temperature to be very hot, and it's very sanitary.
That seems like the better idea.
Okay. All right, signage to discourage large gatherings. And I don't know how you say it much different than that, because if a family of 10 comes in, I assume we're going to seat that family of 10 together, I would think. I mean, I don't know what the guidelines are going to be, but I would think if it's a family, they can sit together.
Do you need to put any tapes on the floor to space tables or to move tables out or anything like that? Because the issue with the family of 10 is people who may be sitting near them.
And I don't know how you address that really in writing, because that's going to vary a lot. I mean, I don't even think we're sure that we're going to separate tables. I don't know. I've heard maybe in the first phase we use every other table, and maybe the second phase we don't. So, I mean, this is a lot of things are in the dark right now, and we're doing a lot of guessing. Of course, we talked about the temperature a few minutes ago.
One thing that we talked about, one thing we talked about in the yesterday a little bit. You know, it's hard to just. It's so hard to put things in writing. You know, like tape on tables, or tables have to be X number of feet apart. I mean, because there's so many different setups out there. And in the restaurant business, it is a social gathering a lot. And so I think it becomes very hard to me to start specifying spacing, for instance. I think you can encourage certain behaviors and discourage others, but I think it's real hard to put something in writing of what you expect restaurants to do when it comes to things like spacing.
And I think the next one is just basically common sense. If someone is sick or has a fever of 104, I don't think they should try to come in the restaurant anyway. Let's hope. Providing hand sanitizers, even wash stations if that's possible. And some places can do that. Some of the larger ones maybe can. And even have a cart maybe that we use to put sanitizer type items on, hand wash or hand sanitizers and things so the customers can get access to, not only our employees. Discourage people from congregating in a waiting area. I've seen that done several ways. Go ahead.
I was just going to suggest, does it make sense to try to incorporate a telephone or a texting methodology that your table's ready?
I've seen suggestions on that on different websites, yes. Again, I think that's a lot going to depend on the restaurant. I think personally, I mean, I don't know how we put that in the guideline. If it's going to be a larger restaurant, I think that makes a lot of sense, and maybe where they even have a little beeper they give you. If you're a small restaurant, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the bigger ones, maybe people can wait in their car.
Right, I think that would work.
I
of course, I think removing all condiments from the tables and those type of things is just very common sense, and let either the waitress give it to them or let the cashier, in my case, give it to them. Of course, use wrapped straws only. And we talked about some way to present the check at the table at the end, not use the old typical leather or plastic binder where people use them over and over again. Maybe use a sanitary envelope or something to give them the check in.
Frank, this is Cathy. Do you think you ought to be recommending disposable condiments? Now they may be more expensive, but they're safer.
Yes, and I don't think anybody have a problem with that. I don't believe. And I think that's kind of what we were thinking when we said remove all the salt and pepper shakers from the tables, basically. I think that's what we were thinking.
Okay.
Do you think it's as an idea to suggest that when they greet people that they don't have the waiting section between where you are arriving and where the hostess or the greeter would be, so that they're actually at, you don't have to walk through a crowd to get up to check in. And that's where, even if it's not a phone system or a texting system, but something where they make an effort to get ahead of that or distribute people, disperse them so that they're not waiting. I know you've got the congregating, just wondering if we could give a couple of suggestions there to make it a little bit more specific.
I think we could do that. Yes, I think so.
Now, Frank,
Jonathan,
this is
in your
Kath.
case at your winery, do you actually have people that wait, or are they kind of in a line? How do you serve your people, your customers?
Frank, is that for me?
Yes.
So when they come in, they go to a greeter station, and we sign them in, and we give them a beeper, just like if you're going to a restaurant and you have to wait. There's a wait there. So that's how it has been done in the past. We're trying to figure out what to do now.
Would your beeper system work all the way to their car if they went back and sat in their car?
It does not work that distance.
Okay.
And we even put, they make extenders for it. But based on the fact that our building is, has so much metal around it, it will not reach even really outside in the parking lot near the greeter station door where the main signal is going off of.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Yeah,
Hey,
Frank, this is Kathy again. I had another thought. Should there be anything in here about the employees wearing masks?
We've had a lot of discussion about that. I don't know. What does the group think?
Hey, Frank.
I would
this is Jeff.
prefer not to put it in there.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said I wouldn't recommend it.
I'd leave it up to the employee. If they feel comfortable with it, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Otherwise, I'm fine too.
Yeah, I'm fine too, Cheryl.
Now, how about the bars? Does this just apply to restaurants, or is this for bars as well?
I think it works for bars other than the separation question. I mean, I think that's something that the governor's going to tell us what to do, I think, anyway.
I thought you guys gave a lot of consideration to trying to be general enough to have these be guidelines so that a restaurant could adapt them to their own environment. But one of the things is, I think, going to possibly be asked as we get ready to reopen is there a difference between how you treat outdoor and indoor seating?
I do know that the Restaurant Association is going to encourage outdoor seating in the beginning. I don't know whether that's 1 week or not, because the rumor, I think, is that the restaurant's going to be able to open next week, the 4th, and maybe the 11th they'll be open, a little more open, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I think outdoor seating is going to be encouraged because you can separate people easier outdoors.
Hey, Cheryl, it's Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm with Frank on that, on the outside seating. Of course, we all have a little bit of it, but the South Carolina Restaurant Association, they put on Facebook the other day that outdoor seating was going to be open Monday, 5/4, and indoor 5/18, and the state of emergency is still 5/10. And then I've had multiple calls, Marc and I, on everybody's like, oh, we're opening Monday. We can open Monday. I'm like, well, I don't think so. If you scroll down to the very bottom of it, which nobody reads the whole thing, it says it was a suggestion. I don't know if people might try to open up on Monday. We might need to get with some of the news stations and, say that was just a Facebook, wannabe.
So clarifying that we should maybe make sure that people know that that's not, it's not a done deal. It's a consideration, and that's what they're working toward, but not necessarily that's going to happen.
Yeah, because we've had, Marc knows, we've had a bunch of calls on it already. I had 4 today.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheryl, it's Marc again. The one thing that we talked a lot about, if you'll notice that we encourage or we discourage, and and I think when we write guidelines, they need to be somewhat open as far as we're not telling people they have to do this. They are guidelines; they're not necessarily rules, is the way I read it. And I think it gives us at least a map of what is expected. And then obviously we think the governor, we're sure we're going to have some specifics that we're expected to do. But that's the hard part about why things like the wearing of masks or gloves or, spacing and stuff. It's those are type of things that you either do or you don't. But and I agree. I think Chad said if an employee wants to wear a mask, you know what? I don't know too many employers that would have a problem with that. But it's like when you tell them everyone has to wear a mask in a social environment, I think that becomes difficult.
Marc, I agree with you 100%. That has been a question that's been asked with our management team, in our different locations is, should we require, our folks to wear masks? And I think it's, I understand the question, is it social responsibility and all that? But I do think some folks don't want to wear a mask, and some folks think I want that person to wear a mask. So it's all over the board with what folks are, I'm just speaking from my team are saying.
Well, I'll put 2 cents in. This is Cathy. Just as a consumer, I don't own the business, but I can tell you that if you go to Publix, you go to Boulineau's, you go to Aldi, they've done a really good job making people feel comfortable to shop there. But I went to Home Depot and I didn't feel comfortable at all. And I think the same thing applies to restaurants. If, word of mouth is a great advertiser. And if people say, Jeff Martini has just done a great job at Midtown Bistro, he's going to get customers. So I guess all I'm saying is the more you can do to make people feel safe, the more your customers will come back.
Cathy, a question that I have based on a consumer perspective. I know some of the accommodations were worried that if they were all wearing masks and you walked in, that's not a warm smile. I mean, it's like, how do you greet people and not seem cold and sterile, which is what you don't want to do when you're trying to greet people for hospitality. So think of it from that perspective. And what would you suggest?
Well, I think today it's a different world, and people actually feel more comfortable when they see people waiting on them with masks. I mean, I agree. I'd rather see a smiling face. But I think for a temporary period of time, people will feel more comfortable if all the precautions are being taken.
And Cathy, I think one thing you said earlier too is the customers are going to see who's trying to do things and trying to help and do the right things. The community has really stepped up to help Boulineau's a lot as far as our employees go. We have customers come in and get checked out by cashier, and they're giving the cashiers $20 tips. I mean, the community is really trying to help my employees. Of course, we haven't laid anybody off. We have all our employees working, but the community has really done good, and 99% of the customers we get coming to the front door try to go by the rules and try to do things right. Now, yeah, we've got that 1%, but I think you're always going to have that 1%, right?
You're always going to have that. That's great to hear, Frank.
Did you all talk about any other business protocols that should be recommended for anything other than restaurants? Or the golf courses have probably already adopted theirs because they stayed open, right, Cathy?
Yeah, they've pretty much adopted all the recommendations from the USGA, and I think they're set.
Cheryl, this is Chad. I mean, I think one of the most immediate things is the accommodations recommendation. I know, for instance, speaking with Billy at the Best Western, they got a good number of check-ins actually this coming weekend, which is great. Glad to hear that. But certainly that's something we need to address. Some of these things cross over, but there are certain things that are going to be specific to the accommodation industry that we certainly need to make some suggestions to. And I apologize because I didn't get an email either, Frank, or I would have participated in that conversation before now. But and I'll be happy to go through some things. Being involved in the hotel business in Myrtle Beach, I have several things that could add to it. But we certainly, I don't agree with many of the steps that Myrtle Beach has taken today. I believe it's overreaching, and frankly, I don't see how it's enforceable. But we do need to make some common sense suggestions to the industry.
The accommodations did have their own meeting yesterday, and there's an organization that had worked on some of the standards for vacation rentals and lobbies and elevator protocols and that sort of thing. I can make sure to send those out to everybody on the committee before our meeting tomorrow, so people have a chance to look at that. And Chad, if you have anything to add to that, we can add that in. I know that that's already been distributed earlier this week to all the accommodations before their meeting. And so that is already in the works. Again, themselves saying, okay, we need to work on this together and collaborate.
Right.
Is there anything, Chad, you would add to this list today that we've got in front of us based on the conversations you've had?
No, I mean, I certainly trust in the other members of this committee are better suited to comment on it. And it looks good, and I agree with it. I'm kind of torn between the idea of like I said before, being required to wear a mask or not. If it's so dangerous that I walk into a place and everybody's got a mask on, I'm asking myself, what am I doing here? So, that's my first response to it. So, and again, I think it's going to be difficult as time goes on to get your employees to wear masks. I mean, but, again, that's why I suggest if somebody feels like one of my employees, I need to wear a mask, I have no objections to that. But as far as requiring it, I'm not sure that would be the way to go.
I have a question, it's Cathy again, about accommodations. How are they going to determine if the person checking in, and maybe they're doing this on the phone or when the person books, that they're not coming from a hotspot? I know New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, but there are other hotspots.
That is $1 million question. Yeah. And so they should have a point of origin for the person who's making a transaction. That doesn't mean everybody in their party shares that address, right? So the governor's declaration basically says that people from those hotspots are supposed to quarantine, and then it was you're not supposed to take new reservations. So there were still reservations on the book before that declaration of no new reservations. So that order stands, and the hotspots that were originally named were New Orleans and the tri-state area. If you go to CDC, there's not like an active list of hotspots. So we've been trying to help answer that question for the accommodations as well. And when they met, there's a little bit of interpretation. But there's also people who are from the tri-state area that are second homeowners here. and have a vacation rental or something, so people could see them and think that they're a guest versus an owner. So it's going to be something that they're expecting the dispatch to be getting a lot of calls, I think, with people asking questions. But I was on a call earlier today, and I know the Outer Banks is very concerned about some of the people have been talking rudely to people and confronting people with out-of-state license plates, like, why are you even here? And we certainly hope that we don't encounter that sort of visitor and resident interaction here in North Myrtle Beach, because just because they have a license plate from there, we don't know if they had, when they made their reservation, if they're a second, if it's their second home, and how to manage that. And people are kind of jumpy about those license plates. Jonathan, you're on mute.
Cheryl, I want to give you an example that happened last week in North Myrtle Beach. One of our, when I say long-term customers, it's a individual from New York that they come in December and they stay through April, and then they go back home every year. But anyway, they were in the Walmart parking lot, and somebody from North Myrtle Beach left. Well, I won't say they're from North Myrtle Beach because I don't know where they're from exactly. But they left a note, said, go, I'm not going to use the word that they use, but go to blank home from the locals.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, those kinds of things concern me too. And even we've had customers comment on social media as well as others that maybe they shouldn't come and wait till next year when they really miss us, kind of thing. I mean, it's and it's not unique to North Myrtle Beach, but that doesn't make me feel better. You know, you want our community to be warm and welcoming, and yet there's real fear. So I don't know that wearing masks makes people feel less fear, or it validates that they should feel fear. That's where I struggle with the mask situation.
Cheryl, I'll give you this is just my opinion. I'm not saying this is what we're going to do at Duplin Winery. I'm just giving you my personal opinion. I do know that, you know, when this stuff happened, I was out of the country. And so I, of course, you know, when I got back, sort of self-quarantine, you know, social distance at the house for a couple of weeks. And then when I did go back to North Myrtle Beach from North Carolina, I will tell you, it made me feel really, really scared seeing everybody wearing masks, because you just didn't see that in North Carolina like you did there. And I don't know if it's because of, you know, where I have a home in North Carolina, you know, we do have, it's a retirement community, but we did have a tremendous influx of folks from New York City to come into our community, you know, especially children, you know, from families that were there that sent their children to be with, you know, I guess with their grandparents. But, you know, so our population in this little area probably grew, I'm gonna say 50+%, but you just don't see people wearing masks. So it was a shock for me, but I do have, you know, our staff, I'm only talking to our staff when I talk to them about the ones that do wear masks every single day. They're doing it because they're scared, but also because of social responsibility is what they're telling me. So that's just going to share that.
Frank, do you have any things for next steps? I mean, it didn't really seem like we had edits to this page. People like it.
Yeah, I think we just need to make a few edits and then I guess present it tomorrow during our meeting, or what's the next step?
Yeah, we could do that, and then, and if you want to, we could make the edits and we could send them out with the accommodation stuff too. And then I got something, some employee guidelines that, there was a workshop today that somebody had. This is from the HTC management, put together a workshop, I guess. And so, sharing that, and then people can take some looks at, review it before the meeting tomorrow, and then we can discuss it on the agenda.
Okay. Getting back to the guidelines for the accommodation, you say you pretty well have that already, or what now?
I think they feel like they do. Mendel, you were on that call yesterday. I think they felt pretty good about what they were working with. What was your take?
The accommodations members, absolutely. Yeah, they were all pretty much on the same page. Yeah.
All right. So any other comments or input on this list?
Thank you all for doing that.
Thank everyone.
We have our next portion of this meeting starting at 3, and that's the communications messaging portion. So feel free to stay. We've been putting it on mute until it gets time to start the next portion. It is all being viewed. People can watch it on YouTube. So do mute if you're going to stay, because until 3 o'clock, other people can still hear us even if we're not thinking we're in a meeting. All right, we'll start again at 3. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
How's everybody?
Good. How are you doing, Cheryl?
Good.
Good.
Mendel, I have your stuff if you want me to share it, or did you want to share it?
No, I mean, no, you could just share it. It's just a quick little bullet point. I know we're still waiting on Brandon Cox and who else? Monica from
Yes.
McLeod.
And I think that was.
And we got Joe with us. I think he was in the last meeting. Hey, Joe, how are you doing today? Good.
Frank, Joe, and Cathy and I were all in the last one too, and you were there for part of that too, Mendel. So,
yeah, I listened to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to have the participation we're getting today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will we wait a minute if you'd like with to give Monica a minute?
Sure. Yeah,
I talked to her earlier today, and she was planning to be on the call. So.
And I spoke with Brandon and him as well. So. There's Brandon. It's like he's connecting right now.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get this set up to share the document. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm. You might need to make it just a little bit. There you go. Yeah. Hey, Brandon, can you hear us?
Can you still see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I closed my computer so I can see my screen and type. So if we have any edits.
Okay. So while we wait for Monica to jump on the call, we'll kind of go ahead and get started. We'll bring Joe and Cathy up to speed. Yesterday, the accommodations members had a call, and ironically had about 70 accommodations members on that call to talk about protocols that they were going to establish for opening back up in regards to short-term rentals, adhering to the governor's orders, things of that nature. Cheryl has that, but one of the things that we did discuss with the city manager, Mike Mahaney, was Cheryl collecting private data from all of these members to gather the occupancy rate as we continue to evolve and get back to business, so that we could share with the North Myrtle Beach City Council and the administration the occupancy rate, so that the city had the ability to staff at the levels they need to be. Because right now, Mike, has some issues with them getting people back on payroll and things of that nature, because we don't have a full staff of lifeguards and things of that nature. So it's very important that we, be a part of this communication process, and also a facilitator, especially from the chamber standpoint, in helping be that communication line to bridge the gaps and kind of a conduit to get them that information. So that was one of the reasons we talked about the communication plan. That first bullet point was because we need to help the city in determining their staffing levels for lifeguards and things of that nature as we ramp back up for the spring and the late spring and summer months. Through that, Brandon, I'll let you, if you don't mind, kind of talk a little bit about the protocols that y'all discussed yesterday from the things that we'll eventually be able to communicate to our citizens and other businesses in the area as well.
Sure. So I think we had a good meeting yesterday, one of which was to really share information and invite information from other folks. We presented a plan as we saw it, and I had some good feedback from folks. I've received some other information today, shared it with you guys as well, that can supplement that. But in general, those policies are meant to really speak to the need of what we need to do post COVID-19 in light of opening. So obvious things like maintaining social distancing, frequent hand washing, lines on the floor that encourage people to remain 6 feet apart while they're here in our lobby. We installed plexiglass in our lobby. We have beefed up our cleaning procedures. We are sharing telehealth information for both staff and for guests who may be staying with us, so they can access local medical care systems if they need to. We're sharing all of the executive orders that are relevant to their stay, providing information about where they can go eat in light of the fact that restaurants are not open, and many other things to try to cover all of our bases. It was a good meeting, I thought. I was glad that we had such heavy participation. At this point, it's about making sure that everybody's plugged in as we move forward so that we can move forward in as coordinated a way as possible. And so I was pleased to see the participation level that we had and the feedback that we got. Still interested in receiving that feedback as we move along. I think if we learned anything throughout this process, it's that, things change quickly. So we have to be open to receiving new information and adjusting accordingly. And we certainly are planning to have to do that here.
Sure. And so, Joe and Cathy, one of the things I'd like to bring you up to speed on too is what Brandon just highlighted, is that one of the things they're giving out to their guests when they do begin to check in is they have the ability, they're actually encouraging them to use McLeod's telehealth if they have any symptoms or anything of that nature, so that they can go immediately and get tested at a testing site.
That's good.
And also, if anybody tests positive, they have to let the vacation management company know so that they can do the thorough cleaning that needs to be done on that property or take it out of a service as well. The other thing too on that call is that we had a couple of property management companies on that call as well that manage common areas for places like what would Coastal Management Association, Brandon manage? What would they? There were areas that they would make sure that they continue to clean the common areas. One of the things that we talked about the other day on our phone call, making sure that they're doing those duties, cleaning the elevators, wiping down the lobbies, things of that nature as well. Are there any comments that you guys have, Cathy or Joe?
I think the idea of the McLeod telehealth is really a good one. Now, you're advising people that the recommendation is to advise people as they're checking in of sort of this checklist of things, where they can find things, what they can do, so on.
Yeah, we're actually providing it pre-arrival in email communications. That would be the first touch point. They receive it again in their check-in packet when they arrive. And additionally, as we're moving into this slow, open phase here, we're, based on the number of arrivals, we're actually taking the time to try to reach out to everyone directly with a phone call as well, because we are capable of doing that at this point. The point is we want everybody to come have a good time and enjoy our area, but to do so responsibly. And so we're taking every opportunity we can to communicate to people and not taking any of that for granted.
I'll just chime in that the Chamber CVB is putting that expectation of guests information on the healthy travel tip page. So it will reinforce that as people are looking at our destination, thinking about planning here, sharing what those expectations of some of that would look like.
Is that something that can be downloaded and printed, Cheryl?
Yes, it's not up there yet. We're still working on refining that, but yes, that will be something that people will be able to get. And we're also going to offer it to some of the accommodations that do just a few units here and there. We're going to make sure we're offering it both electronically as well as something that they can print if they need to do that for their checklist too.
The reason I'm asking is I'm thinking about right here at Tidewater, so many condo owners rent, and I guess some of their renters will be coming back, and they may not be coming through rental companies. So I'd like to at least hand out those visitors with their passes something that they can go to see suggestions for where they can eat, the suggestion about McLeod telehealth, things like that.
Sure. Cathy, I'll forward you all the information that was sent to the accommodations. Joe, do you want me to send it to you?
Yeah. One of the things I was going to add is Mendel mentioned a couple of the HOA, Coastal, I think you said.
That's right.
We have in Barefoot, we have one primary management company, which is Ponderosa. They do a great job as far as e-blasts and notifying everybody. But a number of our multifamily communities also have a HOA management company other than Ponderosa. So when we send out e-blasts, we don't know that if Waccamaw Management or First Services or Coastal is forwarding that information to their owners in their communities. Is there some way that there can be a list of, or, I mean, there's a dozen management companies from Atalaya to, to Waccamaw.
Brandon, most of those on
If they could get these mailings and have the responsibility to forward it on to their owners?
Yeah, I have, let me sort this. I have a spreadsheet up of, I can't verify that it's 100% complete, Joe, but it has, I'm certain the vast majority of property management companies that work in our area or have properties that they represent in our area.
Right.
If you'll give me just 1 second, I can probably sort it here on the fly, and I can confirm with you whether or not they would have been someone who had received the information that we shared, because we included them in that group.
Yeah, well, Brandon's looking at that, Joe. We sent it, the email went out to more than 375 individuals. That's not 375 businesses. Some of those have multiple. And we took our entire database, whether or not they're a member or a non-member, and merged it with the management companies that Brandon gave us, deduped it, and came up with that list. We could work with Brandon to send out a separate communication to the management companies, encouraging them to forward that, because the accommodations messaging might not be carried to the owner. Brandon, I'm just
and that's the resistance you get from people who live in these multifamily buildings where they're rentals. And so you have no idea. So if you have Pinnacle or Wright or Ponderosa or Atalaya or CMS or Coastal or whatever, they're really your first line to get this information out there.
Yeah, I would need to get a hold of the information so I could disseminate it to our property management. And just like Joe's saying, we have one major one, but there are two others because of the different condominium associations.
Sure. I can confirm that First Service Residential was received the information as they were on the list that Cheryl had. Wright, Noble, Benchmark, Coastal Association Management, Empress Management, Gold Crown, Noble, Pinnacle, Ram, Waccamaw, White. Have I left anyone else? Ponderosa received it.
Omni, Atalaya.
Atalaya received it.
Atalaya. And CMS? Benchmark?
Benchmark, yes.
Okay.
How about Omni?
Omni. They did, yes.
Okay, good.
And you said Pinnacle as well?
Pinnacle, yes. The only one that I don't see on my list unless it's listed in a different name. Do you know what CMS stands for, perhaps?
Community management, something. It's Benchmark. It used to be Benchmark.
Well, we have CAMS. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Community
CAMS
Association Management.
Yeah, they received it as well. So everybody that you mentioned was on the list that we communicated to and hopefully participated in the meeting invite that we had. But even if they didn't, they received the communication of those files, which would have included how Coastal was handling it as an example. If they wanted to use that, I'm quite certain that these folks take their charge seriously as we do and have crafted procedures absent being presented an example as we did.
That's great. That's great. Those were just ones that I had dealt with in the past, and I was thinking that's a big block of accommodations.
Yeah.
Cheryl, can you also make sure that Cathy and Joe get a copy of that if you don't mind?
Yes, I'm going to send them all the communications. We've sent the accommodations. So I'll catch you up after this. It'll probably be a little bit after 5, but I'll catch you up yet today.
Awesome. Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So moving to the next item would be right now, I did listen to you guys, the previous meeting about the protocols and things of that nature. And of course, one of the things we have to do is monitor the governor's plans to reopen the restaurants and the business community, the rest of the business community here locally. You know, right now we don't have any information to tell because we don't know when they're going to open, and we don't know what protocols are going to be set at the state level for restaurants at the current time. But you guys had a good recommendation. I'm sure we're going to get a list of things that would help accommodate our community as well to build confidence in getting our locals back out into the business realm and also making them feel comfortable doing business in the community as a whole. I did hear you bring that up, Cathy, and I do agree with you. You know, at the end of the day, perception's reality, right?
That's
so
right.
People have to perceive that they're in a safe environment. But that's one of the things we'll definitely have to do on this communication committee is just kind of keep track of what the governor's doing and when he's going to do things and get that information out there in a timely manner. You know, we talked about the recommended protocols that have been established. You know, you guys talked about it, but we really don't know what those protocols are going to be or going to look like. One of the things that we did talk about yesterday with Mike Mahaney is we want to make sure that we are getting our visitors the right phone number to make phone calls when they have issues, because we don't need them tying up our 911 lines and also our public safety dispatchers. So that's one of the things we did talk about yesterday. So that's information that we need to make sure that also our management companies and, you know, our vacation rentals, all that stuff, they're able to get that number that Mike needs them to call so that we're not tying up their resources for things that they need to be utilizing those resources for.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, do you have that number? I don't know. Did Cheryl get up with you about that number yesterday, Mike?
No, you know, I forwarded you the email that I asked y'all to send to all of, you know, everybody that's renting, that, you know, our instructions are going to be for them to call, you know, the realtor or the HOA or whatever. But if I got anything back from that, I must have missed it.
That's okay. I'm just making sure. But yeah, we definitely are making sure we're getting that information out there.
Right.
Did the other thing, while I got you, before you go back on mute, was the mayor able to get her other videos done, Mike?
The mayor has not done any videos.
No.
She did call the governor's office yesterday and today and talk to them about the concerns that we're getting and the animosity that we're getting from Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. Many of those from outlying areas that don't have a lot of corona. And, you know, we're getting a lot of nasty emails, phone calls, and posts, some of which we've removed when they had profanity, you know, generally saying, hey, you know, we feel you're treating us like the Nazis treated the Jews. And we've had a few confrontations. In one particular case, the lady had New Jersey license plates. The guy jumped out of the car with a hammer. There was things exchanged, and she was very frightened. So yeah, there's some clashes going on that are concerning, but we'll work through those.
Sure, I understand.
But the mayor did get a return call back today on some of those issues. We also, she contacted the governor's office on the pool concern of the hotels. And so, yeah, that gives us a good, you know, that gives us a direct line to the governor's office, and she's on that governance committee.
Sure.
So I know that that's happened today, and I think she scheduled her video for tomorrow afternoon.
Okay. And I just want to make sure, so Cathy, you and Joe are aware that the mayor's going to do a couple of video series just to kind of talk about the things that we're doing to get out to the citizens as well.
Is there,
Yes.
is there a plan. Videos are nice if people are going to go look at videos. Is there some way to get a mailer out to our residents? Some type of the information, photos of the mayor, photos of our public employees doing sanitizing at the bathrooms and the benches and the areas and the parks and things like that.
So to
something people can hold and see and not have to worry about, oh, I have to be on the video at a certain time or I got something else to do.
Well, you can forward Pat Dowling's announcement about it in your email blast, and people just have to click on it. And the last one was a 5-6 minute video.
Right, and that's true, but people have to click on it rather than open
up
their mailbox and look at something in their hand.
So to answer your question to that, Joe, the answer is yes. The chamber, as part of its messaging campaign to rebuild citizen support and getting our community back to getting out and doing business with our local business people, we have put together an actual direct mail piece that we'll be sending out directly to that kind of highlights the things that you just mentioned.
Because Pat Dowling does an absolutely fantastic job. Mike, he needs to be your employee of the year. But he really does. But what I'm seeing is that people, obviously from our election results, they trust our city council and our mayor.
Sure.
And if they have something in their hand showing our city council and our mayor and director of public safety talking to people or some activity related to the safety of our community, I think that means a lot more.
Will that mailing go to every resident in North Myrtle Beach?
Yes, it will. It will go to every resident in North Myrtle Beach. But one of the things that we also talked to, and we haven't had a chance to finish that conversation with the city, but was also having that information put in to like the utility billing, like
we have
the information, utility billing.
That's excellent.
And
it's going to go out. Oh, excuse me.
Go ahead, Cheryl. Go ahead.
It's going to go out twice in the utility billings. We're going to do May and June. And then we're doing a third one that will go in the mailbox from us. But the first two will be in conjunction. Our team is already working with the deadlines and the size and all that sort of thing with the utility bills. And then as far as the videos, the mayor's got hers, and then she's also participating in ours. And we've got some that we're doing. And we're going to be doing paid social media within North Myrtle Beach, really pushing out the videos as well as these other messages. So people are going to see it in multiple places. So it's not like it's just going to be in that one touch point. We're also going to use some billboards locally to do some messaging. So people, it's going to make them a little bit more aware of the whole process of, that telling them what have we done, to help, prepare, what are we doing? And then also letting them know that when we start marketing, again, we're marketing carefully to those areas that are closer in. We're not, we've got a map that shows what those target areas are for our geo-targeting marketing campaigns and that sort of thing. So we're just going to really put it out there for them so that they can see what it is that we're doing.
This is Cathy again. That's great. One thing I think we need to communicate, I don't know if it's in the same communication or a separate one, and I don't know if Monica has joined the call, but I think, okay. Well, some of the things that she said the other day, I thought were really important for visitors and locals to know. For example, she was talking about that when people get to the emergency room, they're sicker than they usually are because they're putting off getting there, and that they shouldn't be afraid to call 911, for example, if there's an emergency, and that there's plenty of capacity and things like that. I'm sure there's plenty more that Monica can add to that.
Well, I'm glad you like that, because Monica is at 4 o'clock today. She's going to do an on-camera video with us that we'll be using to message exactly along the lines of what she said the other day.
Oh,
You're
good.
on mute, Monica.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so we'll talk about capacity and that we're monitoring it very closely to make sure that not only McLeod, Seacoast, but Loris and the other hospitals on the Grand Strand do have the capacity that we can take care of our community. So
That's great.
Cheryl, is there any plan to bring the North Strand News into this? Because they have some real skin in the game, because if they don't give us some good coverage for the city of North Myrtle Beach and the businesses in North Myrtle Beach, they won't have any advertisers.
Yes, there is actually a media plan to go with this, working on some earned media as well as possibly some paid placements. But we actually think that they're going to pick up on this story. We're doing a series of business people, the faces of a front desk guest services person talking about how she misses her customers and the kind of things, the hospitality. But we've got a variety of videos that we'll be using just to tell those stories. And we think that the media is going to go find some of their own stories, and that will be great. And they'll augment that, and it'll become news as well as the marketing. So it's going to, we think, be very timely and important. And I think people will respond to that.
Thank you.
So is
We're
there,
really fortunate. I just want to, since Mike's on the phone, I know lots of other people are watching this. This resident piece of our recovery strategy, the city is really funding that, because our funding for tourism promotion is restricted dollars, and we can't use those dollars internally inside North Myrtle Beach. So the city's really stepped up to help us with those recovery dollars so that we can do the resident piece of our strategy. And I want to say thank you to Mike and the city council every chance I get. So thank you.
You're entirely welcome. We're all in this together.
We are. Thank you.
We'll fund the first $260,000, and then Cathy and Joe will fund the next.
Good.
I love it. Hey, Monica, I have a question for you. Is it possible for you guys, I know like South Carolina DHEC, every day they've now published how many rooms they have available, the percentage that are being occupied, and the number that are in the hospital system for COVID-19. Is there any way to break that down locally for the Grand Strand area, is to get that information to where there's like a data page that we could put up on the chamber website or something?
I don't know if we want to do that specifically, because it's ever changing, and everyone, it's kind of a data governance on how you actually report your numbers and,
Sure.
and such. So I think, doesn't DHEC break it down by county already? And then with us living in close to North Carolina, there's a little bit of a difference too. I worry about too much data getting out there and people misinterpreting it.
Sure, no, that's fine. I just figured I would ask. Yeah.
Yeah. I will tell you, we are reporting to the local county every day, the EOS, the emergency management, to help them. So they're getting data straight from all of the 3 hospitals here, or 4 hospitals.
Okay.
Conway, Grand Strand, and Loris and Seacoast. So they're monitoring it too.
Okay, great. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. We had 0 cases in Horry County yesterday, right? Was that correct? Do you remember?
I'm not looking at it on a daily basis now. I'm going to be on video.
Okay. No, that's okay. I just didn't, that's all right. No worries. I can go back and look. But
we are significantly under from the whole state.
Anything else that we really need to be focused on?
Sorry, what? Say that again.
No, you broke up. We had a little bit of internet interruption.
Yeah, I said we are really, Horry County is really doing really good compared to the rest of the state. You know, Clarendon County has a hot pocket, and Florence County has a hot pocket. So what we're seeing, I don't want to say anything clinically, but what we are seeing is if it gets into a nursing home or an assisted living is where you're starting to see where the big issues are versus individuals. And I think we've seen that across the country.
Sure. Okay.
Mendel,
So
if I could just share one thing. Wall Street Journal was here last weekend to sort of see what it looked like with our public beach access reopening and some of the retail. And we helped them find some people to talk to. And I know the mayor talked to them. I'm not sure if it was the same story. They had a couple of different people working different angles. But one of the things that I think we all need to keep in mind as we're developing our messaging is to not let people compare us to other communities. So even ourselves, we need to say, well, because when the Wall Street Journal first called me, I wanted to know what his angle was before I really said anything, right? So I was interviewing him, and I was a little worried that they were going to say, okay, South Carolina is going to be like Jacksonville, Florida, and Jacksonville, Florida's got 100,000 residents. And my point to him was, don't compare us, because we aren't Jacksonville. We've got, less than 18,000 people here probably right now, and 9 miles of beach. So let's be careful. And so I think we're all going to have to sort of resist that. And as we start to open up, that's what the media is going to want to do potentially. I don't mean locally, I even just mean nationally. So we're going to all need to be aware of that sort of trap that could create for ourselves, because it changes and we don't know all the things that those other communities are doing. And it's just something I think we're going to have to resist.
Can y'all, Cheryl, I just sent you, Mendel, Joe, and Cathy, something I sent to council a few days ago. Are y'all in a position where y'all can look at what I just sent you and open it up, and let's talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, I can open it on the screen. Let's see, you need to stop sharing. I'll open it up and.
I got it.
Okay, I wasn't sure who all was on. I think I got Brandon in here, but if you can pull it up on the screen.
That's the Uniflow 17.
Is this the COVID-19 South
Yes.
Carolina?
Yes,
I highlighted. I mean, this is a slippery slope, but I want to point something out to you if you can pull up. All right, Scott. All right. First of all, what I highlighted in that, this is for the last 14 days, which went from the 13th to the 26th. Now scroll down, Cheryl, to Horry County. Okay, this is by county. So scroll down to Horry County. All right. Well, you jump back up, back down to Horry. All right. Now, I want you to see what I wrote in at the bottom. 29582, which is North Myrtle Beach, for that 14-day period, as far as new cases, is a 0. That's a slippery slope, but the reason I sent this out to council is, when they were catching heat about opening beach accesses and whatever, and again, that's not to say there won't be a spike tomorrow, but I found that's a very interesting document to study and then to actually dial down for those who have, like Richland County or whatever, to dial down where they are. And in many cases, when we dialed down, a lot of those high numbers were nursing homes.
Well, this is Cathy, Mike. I just saw an article today, and this is going to be a concern, I guess, from local citizens, is as we open this up, people are coming in from other areas and they're all going to places where this can be spread, like restaurants, beaches, swimming pools, accommodations, attractions. So I'm thinking this will probably go up some.
Oh, I know it will, but that's why I'm saying it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
But the reality is we're doing pretty darn good.
We are.
Doing great.
Thank you for sharing that, Mike.
Yeah.
So Cheryl, do you have anything else, or you guys have anything else you think we should touch base on before we have our meeting with the mayor tomorrow in regards to communications?
I think that the information as far as how the protocols are being shared, I think that's going to come out of the group that met earlier was talking about restaurants. We've talked a little bit about the accommodations, just making sure that we wrap that into our messaging, that, in that preparation, and we're featuring some stories in that with the videos. And since people will be watching, I think we just reiterate it. We don't just talk to ourselves, we make sure that we're using this time when people are following along and interested from the public in what we're doing, that we continue to message that through these meetings too. So not to belabor a point, but to make sure that we're making those points each time that we meet. We're getting ready before we just open up.
I got you. I agree with that 100%. And Brandon, I'd also like to thank you guys. I know y'all took a lot of time, energy, and effort in establishing, recommended protocols for accommodations across the board. And yesterday, when y'all presented them to the entire accommodations group, they were all on board and very receptive. So I want to thank you for your time. I know you invested a lot of time, energy, and effort into that.
Sure, thank you for that. It's something we would have had to do either way, so it's easy enough to share something that we already had to do anyway. So.
And that's a good point, Mendel and Cheryl. Normally we're tracking when we do this like tomorrow, and lots of times there's over 100 people that are watching that aren't actually on the committee.
Right.
People come in and out, but many times it's over 100.
Right.
We've got a meeting in the morning and we've got a new PowerPoint with some examples. Should we show part of that at the meeting tomorrow? We really haven't sent out a like an agenda. We were really going to have the report out, but we could share an update on what some of that messaging looks like and who's some of the themes from the videos that we're doing, so that people can see that and do a share, so people who are watching can see the information.
Sure, that'd be great. We all have time. Yeah.
Okay. And then one of the things I just wanted to share, that the North and Southern South Carolina chambers met today for a joint meeting, and we're working together to create a business reopening sort of handbook that we'll all be able to use in our communities. So instead of everybody doing their own individually, we decided today to help pool those resources and work on that. And there's actually one of the chambers that offered that they're taking the lead on that. So people are sending them what they've already got under development, but instead of creating 60, we're going to work together, which I think is great. And we'll be able to send that out, and we'll be able to post it on the website, so that it's not about whether or not you pay dues to the chamber. It'll become a community resource, and we can give it to the city to use and make sure people know about it as well. So I think there's some additional resources coming, and just, that we're all in this, working through it, planning for how we move deliberately together forward, and sharing those resources, I think, is really important.
That's great. Thank you, Cheryl. So anything else you guys can think of? With that being said, I appreciate your time this afternoon, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Y'all have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Y'all stay safe.
You too, Mike.